And then God said, "Let us make man in our image, according to our likeness, and let them rule over the fish of the sea, and over the birds of the sky, and over the cattle, and over all the earth, and over every creeping thing that creeps on the earth." God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. These verses from the opening book of Genesis in the Bible establish the precedent for an essential binarism in Christian sexual anthropology. Put otherwise, this is the biblical foundation for the belief that people are created as either men or women. A fundamental male-female dimorphism underlies not only the Christian thought about human sexuality, but also the traditional correlated assignment of social and ecclesial or church roles for men and women, based on the belief that the sexes are created as an essential, complementary, reproductive pair. Binary sexual classification is ingrained in us from our first moments, as it is asked of our parents, "Are you having a boy? Is it a girl?" It is entrenched in us as we stand in line on playgrounds and in classrooms, when we sign forms and applications, when we use the restroom. Binary sexual classification affects not only practice, but also thought patterns as we are enculturated in what it means to be a man or a woman. Yet, human sex, mammalian sex, is much more complex than the simple pink and blue binarism that dominates the imagination and the polis. Sexual development involves chromosomes, gonads, hormones, and genital morphology, or the shape of our bodies. And it occurs over the weeks of gestation, through puberty, and throughout adulthood. Chromosomal and subsequent gonadal information inform the body's development of sexual organs with hormonal cues that tell initially bipotential embryonic structures whether and how to virilize or to feminize. Between weeks 6 and 7 of embryonic development, germ cells migrate from the yolk sac to a bipotential urogenital ridge. And if a Y chromosome is present, together with an intact SRY or sex-determining region, bipotential gonads begin to differentiate into testes. If this information is not present, if there isn't a Y chromosome, or if there isn't an intact SRY region, then the female typical form of internal genitalia will persist until ovaries begin to develop around the 10th week. Developmental branch points of sexual differentiation then continue throughout the weeks of gestation. When embryonic developmental branch points are achieved in typical ways, and chromosomes and gonads and hormones and morphology align, a typical male or female sexed person is born. However, this does not always happen. When there is a misalignment or a variance in morphology or chromosome or hormonal allotment or hormonal sensitivity or receptivity, then a sexually variant or ambiguous or different person is born. Now, sexual variance is named by a variety of terms, and these terms are much contested. These include intersex, middle sex, third sex. In the medical literature, you will read disorders of sexual development. I prefer the term differences in sexual development because many differences are not medically problematic. They are merely differences in design. The etiology or origin of some causes of differences of sexual development is well understood, while in others it is less well understood. Some conditions are extremely rare, while others occur as commonly as 1 in every 200 births. When taken as a whole, persons presenting with differences in sexual development constitute a significant minority population. And we could discuss many types of sexual differences and many types of causes, but here I will mention only 3 to give you points of comparison and relative frequency. So persons with an atypical chromosomal allotment, that is having neither the typical XX or XY chromosomes, are as common as about 1 in 1,600, which is comparable to the number of Hispanic Americans affected by sickle cell anemia. Individuals who have an embryonic failure of vaginal development are as common as 1 in 4,000 to 6,000, not dissimilar to the numbers of newborn males affected by muscular dystrophy. Persons born with difference in the position of the male urethra, for more minor differences, as common as 1 in 300, some say even 150. For more dramatic degrees of difference, as common as 1 in 2,000, comparable to the numbers of individuals affected by spina bifida. I think the most sort of surprising number is the last here, that persons who have some sex assigning or sex norming surgery so that their bodies look like everyone else's are as common as 1 or 2 in 1,000, the same number of individuals who received cleft palate repair each year. So what do we do when we don't fit the categories of maleness and femaleness in a binary culture? Well, at the most personal and immediate level, persons who are born with sexual differences and their families require information, team support, and sometimes, although not always, specialized medical care and counseling. In the absence of an integrative and holistic approach, persons with sexual differences have too often been denied the opportunity for self-determination because of early sex assignment surgeries or hormonal interventions, silence that shrouds their conditions, and the obfuscation and outright deceit about their medical histories. Developments today in pediatric endocrinology, psychology, wellness care, and even legislation continue to inform and shape better practices for protecting the welfare and bodily integrity of persons with differences. But as the reality of biological sex becomes better understood, a deeper philosophical issue is at stake here. Our ideological understanding of binary maleness and femaleness as fixed categories needs to give way to a more flexible appreciation of the sexed person. From a theological perspective, sexual binarism and subsequent moral directives about human personhood that include directives about sexuality, gender expression, and sex-based role assignments for church and society. These have to be reconsidered in light of the multiform biologic presentations of sex. We begin as bipotential sexual beings, and we emerge across a spectrum of sexual expressions. This reality undercuts visions of the complementarity of the sexes, theopolitical concerns driven by absolute categories of maleness and femaleness, and an exclusively reproductive vision of human sexuality. Moreover, sexual variance invites us to consider more broadly the social justice concerns of persons with differences, especially those whose very being is masked beneath binary categories that define almost all aspects of our social participation. As a Catholic theologian, I recognize that all theology begins in human bodily experience. Moses needed his eyes to see the burning bush, and Jacob his brain to dream God's ladder. Revelations, theophanies, sermons, raptures, abstract theorizing, all of these occur in the embodied human. Christian faith in general, and Catholic theology in particular, know and affirm embodied experience as the first and indeed inescapable place of encounter with God. Any attempt to sidestep the body as the inevitable location of knowing results in ideologies inconsistent with the foremost Christian doctrines of creation, the incarnation of Jesus in the flesh, and redemption and resurrection. Catholic theology carries the principle of embodiment throughout the depths of its sacramental self-understanding, that is, its constructions of grace as mediated through the physical, material world. So it is of the highest value for a theologian to align her vision with understandings of persons that are accountable, adequate, and accurate to bodily existence, even when bodily existence challenges ideologies rooted in long practice and seemingly obvious truths. By embracing the reality of sexual difference, Christian thinkers have a wonderful opportunity to revise our theological anthropology away from its classic binarism, to engage in a more inclusive discourse around the creative potential of human life. Difference is not sin or error, but rather a prophetic bodily voicing of the biodiversity that is the basis of all organic creaturely life. What glory might flow from allowing that diversity to inform, or perhaps to multiform, our ethics, our church practice, and our compassionate care of one another, all of whom creatures of this earth, all of whom are made in the image of God.